Hello, Dylan. You are up next, sir.
Hey, how are you, bud?
How's it going? Get a hand for us here, Dylan?
Yeah, just want me to start with like the game overview or like
Yeah, sure. Where are you playing at? Where is this played out of, and what are the stakes?
5-10.
Okay.
It's a home game, and yeah, about 300 big blinds effective,
So
and
like,
6 people at the table.
3,000 effective?
Yeah,
No straddle or anything like that?
not a straddle. There was like a straddle going on, like off and on. Someone would throw 30 bucks in there, but no straddle for this hand. No.
Okay. So is a 510, because I remember asking you in the email when you said six max. I'm like, where's this? I thought maybe this might have been like online or something like that, but it makes sense that it's like a home game. All right. So 510 home game, 3,000 effective. Okay.
Yeah, so I wake up with ace-8 of clubs in the big blind,
Okay.
and action folds around to the small blind who limps, which was really weird to me because he hadn't been limping before. Every time essentially it had folded around to him. He had been raising into my big blind before, putting a lot of pressure on me. And
S-
so,
So I guess you guys don't chop in this game then, huh? In the home game.
no,
No.
not a lot. Because
Okay.
it's a home game, but I'm just with two of my friends, and then there's a few older people as well. So I'm not super tight with everyone at the table. So yeah, not a lot of friendly chopping.
Okay, so the small blind limps, but you're saying that you've seen him raise into you before.
Yeah,
Right. You can definitely play a limp call, limp fold, limp re-raise strategy in this spot. A lot of times we see that in ante types of setups. So it seems to me you think that his hand's probably not that strong unless he's trapping you or something.
yeah. So I went ahead and raised to
Okay.
35,
Okay.
and then kind of what I feared came to fruition. So then he three bet me to 140.
So he limp re-raises you.
Yeah,
So he limp re-raises to 140. So I mean, you got position and you've got a suited ace, right? It's not like he made it crazy large. But I don't know what the deal is with this guy. A lot of time, I mean, sometimes a limp re-raise is very, very strong, but still, as long as it's not aces, you're in position, you can take a flop. Plus, it's a home game, right?
yeah. That was sort of my thought as well. Having a suited ace, it's not like he sort of re-raised it to some absurd amount where he's trying to fold out everything but like my queen queen plus or something like that. So
What's the deal with this guy? Is he an older guy or?
I'd say he's about like, if I had to ballpark it, like 40, 50. Not super old, seems to know what he's doing. I think have a basic understanding of like a pre-flop range and that sort of thing. So I don't think he's doing this sort of as like an exploitative play, like trying to see my raise is just trying to push him off his small blind limp or something like that.
Mhm.
So I definitely think that he's probably weighted towards a more premium hand here, but just having a suited ace, being in position, I thought that there was nothing really else to do here but flat it and take the flop.
So you make the call. I think we can get on board with that. Pot's 280. Okay.
The flop comes out four of clubs, three of diamonds, queen of clubs.
Four of clubs, three of diamonds, queen of clubs. So you flop the nut flush draw.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he c bets for 115.
So small blind bets 115, which is like, what, 40-ish% of the pot, something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, I mean, honestly, here, my decision was pretty simple. I don't think I want to go about raising just yet, just
Hmm.
because, especially if he is, sort of my view on this was he's either like, he's been three betting, I think, more of like a polar range. And so my sort of idea was this is I don't want to scare him off a hand that maybe he's going to bluff later down the line while I have so much equity in this flop. But I also don't want to raise and like be raising into something that's much, much more premium that might even three bet my raise and push me off my hand.
Well, I don't know how exactly. I don't know how many hands he's going to bet. Three bet here in this particular spot, with the exception of like queen, queen. I mean, you have the nut flush draw, but you can, a lot of times in these spots, right? You can just call, and if he checks a blank, like you can start bluffing, right?
Yeah. And so, yeah, so I just called, and then the turn is the 10 of clubs. So I turned the nuts.
Okay, so it's 5-10 to the turn, and it's the 10 of clubs. So you have the stone cold nuts.
Yes.
Okay.
And so he checks. At this point, I honestly think I should have bet here. And I think that's actually where I made a mistake, but I checked behind.
Well, yeah. I mean, there are certain times that I'll slow play in a given situation. It's usually in shorter stacks, like in tournaments where you're just expected to check back like a lot of cards and you get all the money in. But here's the thing though. I mean, you guys are so deep, right? You're just so deep that you have to maneuver to really get money in the pot. like if he's got some sort of overpair, like I don't think he's just folding. Like you could go 4-500 here, especially even if he had a club in his hand or something like that. Even jacks with the jack of clubs or something like that. He might even check, even if he had like top set or said it's one of these things where if you had top set of queens and you're in the small blind spot here and you call the flop C bet, you very well might do a lot of checking. You're either going to bluff at it or your hand is kind of weighted towards clubs because he blocks like all the top pair. And, if it goes check, check, and then the river's a blank, there's no guarantee that like you're going to get a bet and a raise, right? Coming in on the river. So that's why I do like it's interesting because it's a little bit of an unbalanced thing because, I say like a large bet because I always say, I talk about this terminology, variable turn sizing. What that means is like once an opponent checks to you, you bet like 1/3 on the turn, but it's on a blank. It's not like if it was the 10 of hearts, that might be a little bit, but if it was like, say like, the 8 of hearts or something like that, and he checked, then you can go 1/3 with thick value, your floats, some protection, things like that. But here, you're probably not going to be using that variable turn sizing on a club. So I probably would have bet close to pot, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and so I sort of all this regret sort of came in on the river. So the river is the 4 of diamonds,
Okay.
and so pairs the middle card. And
For the podcast people, again, it's a home game, and the small blind has limp re-raised the hero. Hero in the big blind with ace 8 of clubs. Calls the limp re-raise. They're 3K effective at 510. It's queen 4-3 with 2 clubs. Small blind bets 115 into 280. Hero calls. Pot's 510. Turn. Hero turns the nuts with the 10 of clubs. Small blind checks, and Hero decides to play it tricky and check behind. And now the river's a 4. So it's queen 4-3, 10, 4 with clubs, coming in on the turn.
And so the villain bets here, and he bet a really weird amount. So, because as you said, like the pot, he bet 175, and it confused me a bit because, and maybe this is more just my experience of playing with people, maybe when they've rivered an extremely like value driven hand that they want to like get, try to get a call from, and they don't know if it's going to go check, check. But he led for such a small amount. He led for 175, and it was really confusing to me. So,
I don't know if it's, that's kind of, I don't know how much, you sound like a young guy. I don't know if it's, you're thinking about this like theoretically where you haven't played a lot of live poker, but it's not that odd to me to see a guy try to like squeak some value out with like red kings or, something like this for 175. I don't know what the sizing is. It probably should be larger if you assume most people don't have flushes in this particular spot. But it's, again, I wouldn't have gotten here like this, but I do think that you have to raise. In reality, this is why you played it this way. Yeah, you lose to a boat. Now, if you get 3-bet on the river, obviously we can talk about that and talk about the situation, but I definitely think you need to raise for sure.
Yeah, so I raised to 500.
All right, so Hero raises to 500. I might even gone. Here's the thing about this spot, too, especially when you open up the chance to like go bet 3-bet. Sometimes raising larger than that accomplishes 2 things. First of all, you get the call, right? You get more value, and then it decreases an opponent's bluff frequency. You've arrived in a spot in live poker, which is basically like the lowest bluffing frequency, like in any spot, like of poker, right? Like bet 3, like if this guy bet 3-bets the river, we always talk about check raises on the river being under bluffed in live poker. This would be a bet 3-bet, but even still, and you have the ace of clubs too. So it's not like you checked back like a king high flush, right? And then like he's going to bet 3-bet like with the ace of clubs here, which would be kind of ludicrous on a paired board anyways. You have the ace of clubs. So that's why I would choose to go a little bit larger, maybe 600-700, something like that.
After I raised, the villain, he sort of went into the tank. He's been very like he doesn't make too many facial gestures or anything like that. He wasn't like sighing or moping around or making any visible reaction, but he sort of just like sat there and pretty much didn't say a word, didn't move for like almost 2 minutes. Actually, it's one of the, and I've played a decent amount of live poker, but compared to a lot of older people than me, not an extreme amount. And so this is one of the longest tanks I had ever witnessed live.
Mm-hmm.
Then he raised and jammed all in.
Well, I mean, so you're probably getting like 1.5 to 1. I mean, it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's over a pot size bet. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, this is such an under bluff spot, right? In live poker. I don't like you said this guy was an older guy or what?
Yeah, he's around like middle age, like around 40 to 50. Not like extremely. This wasn't some grandpa.
I mean, I mean, sure. I mean, again, theory would definitely say that you're supposed to bet the turn here, but this is really one of the most. It's kind of one of these spots where it's like a kind of a puke fold, and we have had calls where people have been like, "Oh, the guy's got a queen somehow. He's got queen 10, and he's turning it into a bluff. He would have to like limp re-raise with that hand." I would usually say that you're not going to be good here 1 out of 2.5 times, but again, you've basically hit the. But again, you're in a home game, so it kind of changes the dynamic a little bit. But it's just so hard for somebody to have a bluff here when you do this. Although I will say that, I don't know, maybe from an MDF perspective, if this is going to be one of the best hands that you're going to arrive here with. Although if you do have some slow plays like pocket fours, pocket threes, something like that, it might not be. So it's hard for me to put myself in this spot, but
Yeah.
I think it's a very underbluff spot.
Yeah, that was my concern. I think if I had to look at like the cards that I expected him to have in his holding, I think obviously when he's three betting, he's more likely weighted towards, tens, jacks, queens, kings, aces, those sort of hands. And you're right. I think it's a very underbuilt flop. Like I had only been three bet bluffed like once before on a river, and so I was like super unsure. But then at the same time, I was also unsure about what his perception of me was, given that he definitely had picked up on the fact that maybe I wasn't experienced as he was and certain things like that. And so,
well, before you say let me just pick up on that because it's an interesting spot what you say about that. Again, I can't stress enough that you have the ace of clubs, which is like the key card, but what you said was like, he doesn't know what, he might think that you're some young whippersnapper or something like that, right? Unless he has a pure airball bluff, like with no pair whatsoever. Like if he had a hand like a queen or an overpair and he thought you were some sort of, whippersnapper guy, like why wouldn't he just call with those hands? Why would he bluff with it? Why would he bluff with any type of showdown value if he thought that like you became polarized? You wouldn't want to turn a bluff catcher into a bluff against a polarized range. I'll repeat that again. I think it's very, very important. You would not want to turn a bluff catcher into a bluff against a polarized range. What would be the point of that? So
yeah, that's why this hand was super confusing for me, and that's why I wanted to call it in, because I think this entire hand, I don't necessarily know if I was playing exactly how I should have been, and I don't necessarily know.
Mm-hmm. So what was the result?
So I called, and I think on part, this is part of the fact that it was a home game. So I was playing with one of my buddies, and he was, just like he'd been needling me for a lot of the night, as like I had been definitely making some tighter fold than maybe I should have been. And so I think a combination of a bunch of those things, and I just sort of was fed up at this point, and I stuck in the call. It's like more of a side call than anything else.
Uh-huh.
Right, as you said. I didn't honestly expect to be good here enough of the time to make that call, but I was sort of just fed up, and I called. And so he showed me ace queen of diamonds.
What? Oh, that is so crazy. That is so crazy. Because you wonder, I mean, I'm going to assume that he thinks he's bluffing. I'm going to assume he thinks he's bluffing. And again, I mean, I guess, for him, his perspective, like he's got to, I would probably rather have queen 10 if I were him too, just in case, like you didn't have like 10-10, right?
Yeah.
But, again, one of these spots where like you've played the hand kind of strange, right? By checking back the turn and now you're basically raising his sort of like 1/3 block. Like I would think that ace queen would always want to just call. You know what I'm saying?
I know. I was shocked as well. I mean, I didn't assume why he would go for the raise here. I mean, ace queen is enough showdown value.
Did he think that he was like did he think he was like three betting for value? I don't know.
Honestly, so
as a three bet on the river?
I mean, I think that's why I was so confused about the whole situation. I was sort of like, when I called, it's one of those, like, you just sort of throw the chip into the middle and you're like, oh God, like he's going to show me something. And I'm either completely dominating something that he was airball bluffing with, or I'm getting shown the nuts. And instead I got shown like that. And I was super like, I'm not sure what exactly his motive was. And I sort of asked him, and he he said I felt like I could get you off of something, and I'm like,
Okay, so there you go.
okay.
Then he thought that he was bluffing. But he doesn't really know the concept. Josh Shepard says, I still fold. Maybe even after the guy showed the ace queen. I'm gonna move along. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
No worries.